And
All right, I just hit record. And is everybody here from Witt?
close enough. You have a
Close
quorum.
enough. All right.
You have
So thank you guys for joining us on a Friday afternoon. My team has been working since our last call. Steve Winter and I actually talked to Heather about 2 weeks ago, asking about doing another demo and showing you the art of the possible. So Tron and the CRM team and Jed off our SharePoint team have been working to put together a demo for you guys based on your needs, as you saw the questions go back and forth. So some of it has been developed, some of it we'll talk through. I want to introduce the team real quick that's on the line so you know who all's here. Steve Winter, Vice President at Planet, is online. If Steve would like to say hello, he's muted. Steve, you're muted.
I know, and it was just so eloquent what I just said. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time again for meeting with us. As Dina said, we're really excited about getting the chance to present this to you. Thank you for your patience and your help in participating this. Again, this is the art of the possible here. We recognize that this is not going to be the be-all, end-all solution for everything you have, but I certainly think we're hitting all the major points to give you a lot of confidence that this is a path and we are a company you can work with to get to the end result.
Thanks, Steve. Now, Tron, who you've met before from the CRM team, is going to kick off the demo, and then Jed from the SharePoint team is going to add on to certain items as we will, like from this point in CRM, this will go to SharePoint. We'll show that to you after. So we're going to go in that line, and then we've got a couple of other guys from Planet. Mark and Derek are online as well, in case some questions come up, and they actually wanted to see the demo as well. So do you guys want to introduce yourself real quick so my team knows who all is on the line and what your role is? Maybe we start with Heather.
Sure. I'm Heather Stickler. I'm the head of marketing at Witt O'Brien. And so my interest is all the marketing stuff, which I know we're not going to get into today, but the proposals and leads and opportunities through contracts. Becky?
I am Becky Price. I'm the new proposal manager at Witt O'Brien. And so I will be assisting Heather with implementing the CRM and the pipeline.
Greg, over to you.
I'm Greg Fenton. I'm the COO, and I'll just make it quick for everybody. I'll just take 2 seconds to say who else we have on the phone so we can get going. I have Cheryl here in my office. She's the director of contracts, and as you know from the last time, we want to see potentially what can and can't be done inside of Dynamics 365 as it relates to contracts. We have Rob Thorpe from our IT side. We have Mike Schifano, who I think I just saw drop off, who is the CIO. We have Lance Suens, who is in charge of our program management and will be implementing PMO across our enterprise and developing that on our side of the house. I think I covered everybody.
So, Greg, quick footnote, Mike had to drop off because he wasn't connecting correctly. So I think he's heading around to my office.
Yeah, same problem.
Okay.
All right. So
the one that did not make it on was Paul Murray, who's our CFO, but we will make sure that he gets a copy of the recording.
Okay. Well, like I said, this is recording, and I'll send that over as soon as that's all ready to go. So again, thanks for this second opportunity to get in front of you guys. Tron, is your demo up and ready?
Yeah, it is. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. If not, say something.
This is Heather. I can't see it. It gave me an error message when I logged in saying that there was a connectivity.
This is Greg. I can see it.
Maybe I need to drop off and drop back in.
Yeah.
Use some second floor is good.
Let me do that. I think we'll still be on the call, so I'm just going to drop off the site. Go back in.
Okay, so Heather, you want us to go ahead?
Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Tron, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we looked through all those requirements and all the questions that were answered, and thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. It really helped us in trying to formulate a demonstration here. And while even the responses to the questions probably generate more questions, I think we have enough here to kind of show you how this would fit within Dynamics 365. And then when we looked at the requirements, we identified some dependencies on other tools like SharePoint. So towards the end of my portion of the demo, I'm going to switch us over to Jed, and Jed's going to show you some of the, the SharePoint, really cool SharePoint stuff and how that integrates with CRM for the document management piece. So the very first step, you're looking at your different flow diagrams. It looks like the very first thing would be a lead.
Hold on.
So
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I cannot see this yet at all. I don't want to get too far down before we can dial in. See this. Is there another way to see this presentation? There's the Skype.
It's just the Skype. I am recording it.
I just tried logging in myself, and it didn't.
You can't get in either?
I see the same screen you see.
Are y'all in the same office with anyone else that can see?
That was just me and Becky. She's in the same office, and she can't see it either. So I'm going to try the web app.
Okay.
All right, keep going. I'm sorry. If I have to, I'll go try to connect in hardwire, and because I'm on Wi-Fi, so that might be part of the problem.
okay, sure, no problem. Okay, so the process is your typical sales process. Obtaining a lead, converting a lead into an opportunity, and then that opportunity then translates into a contract. And so I wanted to show you this, even though you didn't specifically ask for this, but this is one way that you could potentially capture a lead. Leads come a number of different ways: referrals, maybe you're at an event, maybe you run into somebody and you're talking about what your offerings are, or they come to your website, and I understand you already have an existing website, so we could certainly work with that website to generate forms out there, or we can create a completely separate site like I'm about to show you here, which is more of like a customer self-service. And so the purpose of this is you could give this to your customers to be able to, maybe search a knowledge base, maybe to get some support, maybe they're coming in to learn more about your offerings, and they fill out a form which would generate a lead, which is what I want to show you here in a bit. But also being able to come into here and view contracts that are associated with them. And I'll show you that piece a little bit later as well. So what I wanted to show you here is basically a concept of generating a lead from a web form. And we do have a contact us form here. So maybe I just fill in some of my information. We'll put a test topic in here, test for description, and maybe they were at a trade show. I'll go ahead and submit this. Now, what this does is basically just takes that information, submits it directly into the CRM database, and puts into the list of leads that are in there. So if I jump over here, this is CRM, and I'm starting off with the lead, the main lead list here. So we have all leads, and then you can certainly filter this down if you want to see leads in current fiscal, or maybe create a custom view that shows all leads this week, or maybe my assigned leads. So if I refresh this here, we can see that one just came in from me. And if I open this, it takes us into that lead form. Now, the process that I could identify as far as the lead process on your flow diagrams is basically, is this lead a go or no go? Which to me, I kind of interpret that as you're either going to qualify the lead or you're going to disqualify the lead. If you're going to qualify the lead, you're going to want to have additional information from the lead. So maybe their job title, you obviously want their phone, maybe the company that they're associated with, and then so forth. Now, what we can do is if you do have certain decisions in your decision tree, we can incorporate those into the top here in this section that has a bunch of green arrows. And we can incorporate, for example, go, no go. That go, no go, let's say you say, this is a go, and you have all the relevant information filled out. We can actually trigger a qualify process off of that programmatically. But for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to hit the qualify button here after I save. And then what the qualify button is going to do is it's going to create 3 records. It's going to create an account, it's going to create a contact, and it's going to create an opportunity. And what it's going to do is automatically going to open up the opportunity for me. So now we're on the opportunity. And on the opportunity screen here, you can see we got a similar process at the top here. We have different stages of the process. For example, qualifying the opportunity, developing the opportunity, going to propose, and then closing the opportunity. So you can see down here on the opportunity, that topic that came through was our test topic. The account was automatically created called Planet Technologies. Here's our description. From what I can tell on your requirements, one of the steps here, if we go through, and we'll skip through the qualify stage here, we'll hit next stage to the develop stage, and that is to identify the sales team. So if we go down here into the opportunity form, there is a subgrid down here called sales team. And if I click on the plus sign next to this, and the little magnifying glass, I can look at existing users in the system. Now, we have a trial tenant set up here, so I only have one user defined, our admin user, so I'll just pick him. And when you choose your sales team, you can identify what their roles are. So we'll say this, this user is the industry expert, and you can add as many people as you want here. Now, one of the things is with choosing your sales team is they'll probably want to have access and get notified that they have access to this opportunity. And so what we can do here is actually programmatically, whenever you associate somebody to your sales team, is programmatically go and make sure that they have access to this opportunity. And we can do that a number of different ways. We can automatically add them to a team, or we can automatically share the opportunity out to them.
How would the opportunity be shared out? Just like an export out, or?
No. So basically, it's the same as if I were to go up here at the top and hit share. I would be able to then add users or teams. And so here I can select my admin user, or if I have predefined teams, so maybe there's an executive team that you want to have access to this opportunity, which would be basically your proposal stage. I would be able to select them and then assign the rights to them. Now that's the manual process of doing that. But like I was saying, if you wanted some sort of an automated process that every time you add individuals to your sales team that they would have access to it, then we would be able to do so.
Okay, and then just one other question as far as sharing leads, is it just with users who have a license in the system, or is there a way to?
That's correct. They would have to be licensed to be able to have access to that information.
Otherwise, we would just export it out. Okay.
Correct. Okay, so we'll say here as part of this develop stage, we've identified the sales team, and we want to develop the proposal. So we'll mark that as complete, but I'll go down here and show you basically how that would happen. Now, at this point, instead of CRM being your document management tool, because it really is not a good document management tool, SharePoint is. SharePoint offers a lot of additional features and things that you're going to want and things that you've asked for in your requirements that only SharePoint can do. But there is a native integration between CRM and SharePoint. And so what we did is we put the grid for SharePoint on this form. And so you would be able to go down here, and let's say you just want to do a blank Word document. You could certainly do that here and then fill out that Word document and create your proposal. But I believe one of the things that you're going to want is the ability to generate these proposals off of templates. So in order to do the templates, because this is a SharePoint grid, we need to then go over to the SharePoint interface. I'm going to show this proposal part, but when we get further into the demo, when we get to contracts, I'm going to turn that over to Jed so he can explain, because there's a lot more processes around contracts. So if I open this up, we're basically going into the folder that is associated with the contract that, the proposal that we're currently on. And one of the content types up here is a custom content type called WOB proposal. And so if I click on this, it will open up and pull that template in. And now I can work with this template to fill out the information. Now, one of the things that we can do with this, and we can't demonstrate now, is we can take a lot of that metadata that you saw over on that opportunity screen and automatically pull that over. So obviously your company, we can pull that because we have Planet Technologies as the company. We could pull that over and make sure that that gets filled into this proposal document. So I'm just going to give this a name up here. We'll just call this the proposal. And that went ahead and already saved for us. And I'm just going to go back to CRM and refresh this, and we can see there's the proposal document. Now, once that proposal document's in here, I believe your process is, one of the steps of your process is to update the probability. So we'll just say this is a 75% probability. And we'll go ahead and save this. And we'll go ahead and say we've already done an internal review of this. And we'll say we've already presented this proposal. And then we'll go to the next stage. A couple other things here. Now, these are a lot of just default out-of-the-box fields. This is completely customizable. If there's other things that you want in here, maybe this has no relevance whatsoever, and you just want to remove these, we can certainly do that. But what is in your flow is whether or not the proposal is accepted, yes, no. So if the proposal is accepted and we click yes, I have over here a contract type. And why this is important is because when this is accepted, we want this to automatically create a contract record. And when it creates a contract record, it's going to have a contract type associated with it. And that's because we need to generate a unique identifier or a unique number for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and show you why that's important. And we'll say that this is an acquisition document type contract. And I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now what's happening right now is there's a workflow that's running, and it's taking this information and it's creating a contract record. Sometimes this takes a few minutes, but I'll go ahead and jump over to our contracts form here, or a grid here, and is that the correct? Yeah, that's the correct one right here. So that automatically got created because because the customer has accepted that proposal, and now we need to go to the contract stage. And probably the first thing you're going to notice at the screen is we have some color here. So we have the green, the yellow, and the red. And in your document, you basically categorize the security by the types of contracts. And so the low security contracts, which are the individual services, consultants, subcontract agreements, vendor contracts, are identified by green. And then your medium security is your yellow, and then your high security is red. And really the reason we're doing this here is because I think it's more for your users to see that, pay attention that these are high security contracts. So don't be careless to, share these out to the wrong individuals or email these to the wrong people or whatever, the case is. But also we can actually key off of this contract type when it goes to SharePoint to also restrict access to those documents. And I think Jed will speak to that a little bit as well when we get to that point. So the other thing here is the contract number. If you notice, we have a prefix and then we have an auto number that's padded with zeros. And so the way that this works is I'll jump over to our contract types to show you this before we continue. We give you the ability to create your own contract type. So if there is another contract that gets added or removed, you can go in here, create that, create the prefix that you want to show up. If you want it to be a fixed length and the length of that fixed number, here's the next number in the order and whether or not to zero pad it. And then that just basically, when you create the contract, it will automatically assign that unique number. Then over on the left, you'll probably notice before I start drilling into some of the stuff is some of these have what looks like a little hierarchy diagram. So one of your requirements is being able to associate contracts with other contracts. So you might have a master contract and maybe you have amendments to that contract before you formulate a final contract. So we have a master contract. I have an amendment 1 and an amendment 2 here. But I'm going to click on this just to show you how this looks. So if I click on that master contract, we can see that we have 2 contracts that are associated with it. And then I would be able to click on these, see more information to open those contracts and work with those from here. So the other thing that we have over here is an embedded chart or inline charts. We've got a couple different charts here. So this pie chart is your contracts by contract type. So let's say you want to see customer contracts. We know that's the orange piece of the pie here. So I can just click on that portion and we get filtered down just to the customer contracts. If I want to see, we have contracts by expiration date. We can see here the number of contracts we have and when they expire by year. So obviously we could change it to be a little bit more granular, maybe every month of the year, whatever the case is. And then we also have a contracts by term and contract type, which is a combination of those two.
Colin, could
All
you
right.
can you show that graph again and then scroll over a little bit on your bar? Because I was only casting a little bit of it on the side.
I'm sorry, what did you want me to do to that?
I wanted to see the graph. I can't really see it. Can you scroll over to the right on your screen?
No, it's fully displayed for me here. I don't know if.
Hey, Heather.
Yeah.
We had the same problem. What I had to do was the button that says fit to window or actual size, click on that.
Oh, okay.
You'll
Yeah.
be able to see the
All
whole
right.
screen.
Got it. Thank you.
Did you want to see any of those other ones if you missed them? This is the pie chart that I showed first. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go in and open up this this master contract because I already have this mostly filled in. And actually, I'm going to go back and set this first stage here of our business process flow to active. All right, so we have our contract number at the top. we have an effective date next.
Hey, Sean. So just
Yep.
so I'm sure now, you're still inside Dynamics. You're inside the contract management app or portion
That's
of
correct.
this. Okay. And then
Yep, I haven't.
This about what you're about to show us, is this out of the box, or have you already kind of played around with this a little bit based off of the information we sent you?
This portion here is completely custom. So we built the contract piece from ground up. The leads, the opportunities, the accounts, the contacts, those were all mostly out of the box. We did a couple slight customizations, but this, everything I've been showing you with contracts has been 100% custom.
Okay, yeah, and that's okay, because the other part, the leads, the opportunities, we already have that built into our current system. Not to say that we wouldn't have to potentially modify it based off of some things that we're talking about, but those workflows we already have established.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and when I say custom, I really mean it's a lot of just configuration.
Yep.
It's not custom coding or anything like that.
Yep. Okay, we're good.
Okay, and so what we have here is we have a flow that basically follows the flow that you provided with a couple decisions in there. Now, those decisions, for example, whether or not this is a Witt O'Brien's contract, yes, no. If there's additional information you have to gather about this within this stage, we could include that up here instead of having it down inside the form. But up here, you can see that this is actually interactive. So if I do click yes, the next part of your process flow is a risk review. So if I go to the next stage of risk review, we can have a yes, no up here as well. So we can see here, if I choose yes, then whether or not that risk is accepted. And then here we have a risk accepted, yes, no. And then I think that's it for that process flow. And then down here in the contract details area, so we have the contract name, we call this master contract, who the company and the account is, which is just a lookup into the accounts, who the owner of this contract is. This is basically who created the contract, unless they have reassigned it to somebody else to work on. If you look down at the bottom here, you can also see who created it, who modified it, when it was created on, when it was modified. Also, the owner, again, is listed down here, and then the status of this contract. If you have other contract type that's not listed under contract types, this is a free text area where you can type that in. If there is a parent contract, which I will show you how this works a little bit later in the form, but this is the parent contract. I'll show you creating an amendment and then how that looks. Service type. So we weren't exactly sure what to put in here, but we think maybe these are valid values, such as debris monitoring, but I put in here an other service because I wasn't quite sure. And then here we have the contract status. So by default, it's going to be in progress. We also have a couple other statuses in here, such as active, expired, on hold. But again, we can add whatever you want to that list. Another status that is not shown in here.
I have a question for you. If you have a contract that's an annual contract, and it expires, wasn't caught, is there any way to trigger that, or are you just showing what the contract status is here?
So yeah, I'm just showing what the contract status is here, but that could certainly be added to that.
Okay.
Right. So this is Cheryl. So any of these critical dates that are tracked within this system here, so term, effective, expiration, this may be similar to what Greg was asking. So on the critical dates, can we set it to automatically trigger someone in my department, let's say 30 days prior to expiration, to notify us via email or alert somehow that this contract is going to expire in 30 days and that an action is required?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and that was in your requirements. I did see that. That's something that doesn't demo real well because it's, you have to wait until that time comes and then it triggers it and then it sends you an email. However, yes, you can set a workflow that it sits in a wait status, and it basically every day that passes, it calculates the difference between the expiration date and today, and if that is 30, equals 30, then it will continue the workflow process, trigger an email or whatever you want it to do, and then it completes that workflow.
And I might add that we actually do that internally. So we have a yearly, we have a service, a couple managed services that we offer that are contracted on a yearly basis, and we do that for those services in our own CRM.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And then so we have a couple dates here, date picker fields here for effective date, your expiration date, notice of signed contract, report date, bond required, yes, no. I'm going to scroll up here. Now, we kind of just threw these fields on the form. Obviously, there's probably be better organization of these fields that can be grouped together under different sections to make it look a little bit more streamlined and easier to use. We have a compliance tracking field, which we identified as a multi-select. So this is actually new to Dynamics 365 version 9, where you can have multi-select check boxes on a form. Compliance tracking other, if it's not in that list and you need to free text type it in. And then we have a couple yes, no fields like can the company terminate for cause or for convenience. Now I want to set these both to no because one of your processes was if either one of these is yes, then you would have a termination notice required field available. So we can hide and show fields based on your business processes. So if either one of those is yes, you can type in the number of days. Option to extend or renew, same thing here. If I choose yes, we get a field extension or renewal provisions where you can type in multiple lines of text. A not to exceed field, again, if it's yes, you have a currency field here with the not to exceed value. Rate increase trigger, also, if it's yes, a field where you can type in a description for that rate increase trigger. And then we have a response time field where you can just type in anything you want, 30 days, 1 year, 6 days, 24 hours, whatever. An information field, this is all multi-line text, contract, notice client info, and then limitation of liabilities with some sample text in it as well. Over here on the right, since we have this associated with a company contact, we can see what the primary contact is. Now this is just read only, but at least it allows you to see that information, see their email, see whatever maybe their phone number is without having to go open up another screen because maybe you need to call them really quick, talk about something regarding this contract. So we can pull in information onto this form from anything that's related to the contract record. Down here is where we have the related contracts. So you can see we have those 2 amendments listed here. But I'm going to come back to this in a few minutes because I just want to jump down into the bottom here first, which is our notes and activities. So the notes and activities, we have 2 tabs here. We have the activities tab and we have what's currently active, which is the notes tab. So anytime somebody's in here working on the contract and they're making changes to the contract, or whatever the case is, they may want to document what they did. So I put in here 2 examples of notes. I increased the not to exceed amount to 200,000. I made some changes to the limitation of liabilities. I removed the following. So you're just keeping track, and then it puts who the user is and timestamps, when they made that change. And then on the activities tab here, this is going to be mostly your things like I placed a phone call or I sent an email to my customer. So down here at the bottom, you can see this is an outgoing phone call. I called AdventureWorks. I discussed the terms of the contract with the customer. You just describe what that call was about. Here you can see I have an outbound email that I sent to them saying, here are some updates related to the acquisition contract. So if I jump over to my email, we can see here is that email that got sent to me. Here are some updates related to the acquisition contract. And what I did with this, if you notice in the subject of this email, there's a what they call a tracking token. So I responded to this and I attached a document to it, and that automatically goes right back into the CRM system under your activities. And you can see right here, I can actually click on this, and we can see the
attachment. Is that linked to the SharePoint site, or is that?
This currently is not, and I thought about that, and that's probably where you're going to want it ultimately, to be moved from here into that SharePoint list.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, I mean, this, you can see my response here, and you can see the document here. So that is probably what we would do. We don't want to be storing all these things inside of CRM. It makes more sense for it to go into SharePoint. So we can trigger a process or write a process that would basically strip it out of this email and then put it into the SharePoint list, or maybe even strip it out of here, replace it with a link to that document. So if somebody does come in here, they're not sure where it went to, they could open up the pointer attachment, and it might have a description in there. This got moved to the SharePoint repository.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go back up to the related contracts here. And so if you do have an amendment to a contract, probably what you're going to do is go to open up the contract first. So I have the master contract, and I'm going to want to create an amendment to this. So I'm going to click on the plus sign here, which is add contract record. If you already created it in the system, you could hit this magnifying glass and then go down through the list of contracts and then choose it, and it would associate it. But if you're creating a brand new one, you just hit this new button. And then what it's going to do is it's going to open up a new contract window, and it's going to pull all the information over from that master contract and pre-fill everything out here. And so you might have a few things you have to do. Maybe you have to go back through the process again. So, identify what type of contract it is, risk review, risk accepted, and so forth. But that is basically how creating, amendments or related contracts would work here.
Hi, this is Cheryl. I have another question related to what I call sometimes related contracts. So we will have amendments exactly as you're showing, but occasionally what will happen as well is that we will have subcontractors who are associated. So let's say for this example, we would subcontract out some of our work for this particular client, AdventureWorks. How would I associate, let's say, a subcontract agreement with XYZ providers to this AdventureWorks so that we can see they're a subcontractor, but they should not be under the same contract record?
Okay.
So if I was to go and look at the AdventureWorks, who is a subcontractor to AdventureWorks, and have a list of associated companies?
Sure. So I now you say that, I do remember that in the requirements, and I did create that. I didn't associate it.
Okay.
But so I did create a subgrid that would allow you to choose a list of subcontractors off of the contacts that are in the system.
Okay.
But if you also need a a list of contracts or subcontracts. Probably what we would do there, because it's not the same as, it sounds like it's not the same as your contract, same as this entity and this information, we would probably create another custom entity for subcontracts and then just create another grid like we have for related contracts, like we would have for subcontractors.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because just sometimes we'll have the main body of a contract. So, for example, let's say our operations in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have a master contract for that. We have amendments, just as you're showing here. We have work orders, as you're showing here. But yet, we will subcontract out part of that work. Sometimes the leadership needs to know, or even internal stakeholders need to understand who the subcontractors are, who are the players under that master contract. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, and that it's really easy for us to do. I did create that relationship, but I think I was just jumping around so much I forgot to actually add that to the form.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So let me ask you a question. So this is good, and logically it makes total sense the way that you just described it from the workflow standpoint. But let's assume that we would need to bring in all of our existing contracts into this methodology. How would something like that work?
Where do you currently store those contracts?
They are being, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're being moved to SharePoint Online right now.
Well, that's the actual contract. That is correct, but I believe Cheryl has all that information in Excel too, as far as the equivalent of the metadata we track.
Right. The fields, we have spreadsheets with these fields right now tracking this information. The contracts themselves are housed in two locations. We have old archived contracts that are on SharePoint. The other contracts right now are on our backed up drive, and we were trying to see how to link those to SharePoint. I just recently found out we can't really link those, so what we'll have to do is copy them from the shared drive onto SharePoint in the same folder.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can take the pressure off of that move as much as possible. There's a tool that we use all the time, almost every single one of our projects, from a company called Scribe Software, and the tool is called Scribe Insight. They actually have a 60-day migration license that we typically purchase for these types of projects, and we can connect to virtually any data source. So if it's Excel, we can connect to Excel documents. As long as the data is well formed, there's columns, and we know what it means, we can map it. We can move that metadata and create the contract records in CRM. As far as the physical documents, as long as there's some sort of way for us to programmatically link those or identify those as being linked to that metadata, then we can programmatically move those into SharePoint and create those links within the CRM system.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you.
So at this point, I think I covered everything I wanted to show as far as getting through the contracts piece here. If we have time and if you want to see it, I would like to circle back to the portal here, because there's also an area where you could give your customers access to view their contracts and have access to those contract documents. There's a number of different ways you can do that, but I did want to show you that. And then if we have time, I can show you what the mobile interface looks like for your users to access the contracts from devices like their phones or their tablets.
Go ahead.
So if everybody's okay with that, I'd like to turn this over to Jed if he's ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Sure. I'll go ahead and share my desktop and take it from here. Let me know as soon as my screen pops up for y'all. All right, everybody see that. I'm basically on the same screen that Tron was in the list of the contracts. You'll see at the top here the one that he had just created. So I'm going to pick up from where he left off in terms of the documents. One of the things that we already did, that behind the scenes, when that contract was first created, it went ahead and looked at the contract type that was selected and provisioned the document in SharePoint based on that type. And so it's already there. The other thing that happened on the SharePoint side, because acquisition documents, were considered more sensitive or needing more restricted permissions and access, if I go and look at that document in the SharePoint side of things, I can go look and see the permissions. There's a default set of permissions that we would set up on the SharePoint side, and all those permissions would be inherited, except for in the cases like with this particular kind of contract, the document, I already had it configured to go ahead and actually over here on the manage access, I can see that the permissions were locked down to this one particular group. So I created a specific group called the highly confidential members, and anybody in that group has the ability to contribute on this document, but that's it. Nobody else does. And it shows me that this document has unique permissions. It doesn't have the same permissions as the rest of the documents in this repository in SharePoint. And all that happened on the fly with some workflows that configured that when that document was first created. So that was one of the things that came up in your in the documentation. The requirements that you had set was being able to kind of really control the access to the more sensitive kinds of documents, and wanted to be able to show you that. The other thing I wanted to do is show you that within SharePoint, I went ahead and created a separate library on the SharePoint side just to store the templates. So I've got a bunch of different document templates that are managed in this separate library, where we can control and say only certain users are allowed to change the template versus any documents that are created based on that template. So everybody would have read access to this, but only certain people that you designate would have the ability to make any adjustments to the default template. The good thing about this is nobody except the people that do edit the documents need to know about this library and actually go here, because one of the things, and I'm going to close these other tabs out that opened automatically here and go back to the CRM side. Let's say I'm on the CRM side and I need to create another document in this contract repository. I'm assuming there would be a single document in here, but maybe there's multiple pieces or multiple. I'm not sure the use case here in terms of how many documents you're expecting to have stored with this that are contracts. But when I do the open location and I want somebody to create a new one that isn't done automatically the way the automatic piece did at the beginning, I can go here and right here I can create any new document based on that template. I'm not sure what reloaded there. So I can go and at any point in time, and Tron already kind of demonstrated this on the opportunity side, that there was a template associated with that. But you don't have to go look for the template. It's available. It's going to automatically create that new document using that template, and it's going to save it in that location that you were at. So you basically just get to click up here, give it a new file name, and start making your changes. You don't have to tell it where. You can right from here switch it to editing it in the application on your computer if you want. But there's no browsing around to figure out, well, where should I put it? Where does it go?
Okay, so it's going to stack it right here within the same. I see. Okay.
Yep, and it's going to associate, it's already going to know that this is a HR employment document type, or in SharePoint lingo, that's content type. One of the things I added as well was a more of a document contract status that's unique to this. So it's a metadata field that I associated with these types of contracts, so that you can distinguish between documents that are kind of in progress or draft, and then being able to say when, and I just created another status of this is a fully executed one. So for contracts that you all create and send out, and before it's fully executed, it needs to be signed, right? So the other option, one of the options for that would be to leverage the third-party DocuSign functionality, which we have embedded here, that I could take this, Word document, select it right from here in the SharePoint library. Again, this particular folder is associated with the CRM contract entity, and then I can go here and say, go get signatures. And what that's going to do is that's going to take that document, send it through DocuSign. You'd have to have your licensing set up, so you would just log in with whatever license account you have with DocuSign, and let it manage that whole process of going out and collecting the information. You would put where you need the signatures, if you need dates, and there's a lot of different options there. You would send, enter in the email addresses of who you needed to collect the signatures from, and then once that whole process is completed on the DocuSign side, it's going to return a document to this same SharePoint library, and it's going to put it in a folder inside of here that has that PDF document. So I'm not going to go through that whole DocuSign process. I did want to show you where I had done that with another example. So I took this acquisition contract test document, sent it through the DocuSign process, and what it returned is it created this subfolder here, and it created this PDF document. So this is what came back, and all I had was a single signature placeholder, and then it date timestamped that signature at the time that signature was submitted. So what I can do with this PDF then is, so that our information, right, by default, the document comes back as just a generic document, but I can go over here and just change the metadata properties and say, actually, this is an acquisition document. That in and of itself is going to trigger the workflow that's going to change the permissions on it, so that it also, the draft Word document already is this content type and already had the permissions locked down. But once I save this, I do want to change the status for this PDF as fully executed. So now that that's saved, it shouldn't take too long, and I should be able to look at the permissions on this and notice that it, changing the document type, maybe still on, oh, there we go. So it very quickly applied the new permissions to that fully executed PDF with the electronic signatures. So that covers the that side of it. One of the other things that we can put in terms of, there was some mention about archival and automatic archival. There's lots of options available within SharePoint to implement some retention and disposition policies. So one of the things that I did, and I will go ahead and just to show you in the back end of what I set up, and I can apply a policy, an information management policy that's associated with all those different kinds of contracts. So I actually have a parent type called a WOB contract, and then all the unique types, the acquisition, the HR, all of those inherit the same policy, where I can say, after 6 months, the last modified, it's going to go ahead and delete any previous versions. A year after the last modified, it's going to go ahead and declare that document a record with it right here within SharePoint, and changed. It can't be deleted. And then we've got it set up to 6 years later, after it's reached that declared a record, it automatically gets moved to the recycle bin, and the recycle bin will get cleaned up after 90 days.
Is there the ability also, so let's say we have a litigation hold for a litigation matter. Is there a way, I'm assuming there is, to go in here and modify this so that instead of it following these particular permissions, it would be placed on a litigation hold, and therefore it would not be deleted?
Correct.
And so forth, to preserve all of those records until we turn that litigation hold off.
Yeah, so that would all be managed through the Security and Compliance Center within Office 365.
Okay.
And would trump any other ongoing policies like this, and prevent the actual deletion from happening.
Okay. Yeah, and the one thing I was looking for, so if let's say a contract expires, and there's been no action on it to extend it or to do anything with it, it just naturally by itself expires. Would the system automatically change that to expired and archive those documents for us, or is that something we'd have to go in and run a report and change all expired contracts to archive manually?
So I guess one of my questions, I wasn't sure about what you meant in terms of archiving. Are you wanting to move it somewhere else, or just kind of have it drop out of view, or what are you intending for it to be archived?
Typically, in the systems I've used before, it would move it to another location.
Yeah.
To kind of free up the active contract repository.
Yeah, I mean those are options. So on these stages, we can there's a number of different actions that you can take. I just showed some of them, but one is to transfer it to another location.
Okay.
And it can be based off of different fields. So we could, integrate with CRM in terms of getting the expiration date as a metadata that's associated with that particular document, and base this policy off of that expiration date rather than the last modified date.
Okay.
And so there's lots you can do to tailor that to your specific needs, so you don't have to do manual things. And the other thing is the moving it to another location isn't quite as much a requirement, because we have the ability to filter things out using views both in CRM and in SharePoint. So the potential for kind of clutter and having to wade through a bunch of antiquated data, it's almost like it's invisible unless you go and actually look for the active content.
All right, so maybe it's a different solution than to move it somewhere else. It's just a different status that it requires. Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem. And the other thing that you can enable or disable here is, and I've got it enabled on this particular location, is for any document in this library, I have the ability to, hang on while it reloads, to just manually say, this document is not going to be changing. Come on. So I can go to the compliance details for that document and just automatically make it declare this document as a record. And that kind of skips that waiting for a year from the modified date, goes in and sets it as a record, and then retains it from 6 years from today.
Okay.
And ensures that no changes happen, including deletion. So you can control it that way. And also, by doing that, it's going to put a little padlock icon on top of this one, so you can visually see that. And there's other metadata columns to know visually that has happened.
Okay, great.
I'm not sure in terms of your all's familiarity with just the out-of-the-box SharePoint search capabilities. We can from anywhere do a search, and then it's right now it's searching in the context of this folder that I'm in. But I can go up and there's a lot that can be done with customizing search, so that you can maybe search across contracts as well as proposals for a particular term, and then be able to set some custom refiners. The more metadata that we provide on the SharePoint side, the more we can do that kind of term searching with some of the other potential metadata that would be in CRM, but we could just do that right from within SharePoint and customize that search experience. I didn't get to the point of being able to demonstrate that, but it is a very highly customizable experience that you can provide in terms of searching within SharePoint. Wanted to kind of point that out.
Okay, that's good.
The other thing, there was a desire and need to, especially for contracts that are provided to you, you get the fully executed scanned copy of a PDF, right, with the hard signatures. I was trying to get it to set this up, but there are a couple add-ons, or actually they're connectors using Microsoft Flow that we can key off of and basically enable you to take an image-based PDF and have a menu system to send that off to go get OCR directly from SharePoint, and then it returns the OCR'd version of the document back to here. There's a couple different providers for those services, and they're a little bit different in terms of how they're priced and structured and the performance options that are available with them. But those are capabilities that you wouldn't necessarily have to have a scanner and OCR software in order to accomplish that right from within this context in this environment.
Okay, so that's if we, and a lot of our contracts, I'd say they're probably 50-50. So
yeah.
A lot of them are on our customer's paper, and we'll receive a scanned copy.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is that the system can OCR those scanned documents rather than us running the OCR process ourselves. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. So there are two companies that I've found that we would evaluate with you to see which of those makes the most sense, both from a feature, functionality, security, performance, cost, which ones to go with. But they all plug into the workflow engine that Microsoft now provides using the Microsoft Flow interface. To build and leverage that and give you that ability right from within SharePoint to send those documents out and get the OCR version back. That I believe covers the main document management kind of side of things that I wanted to hit on. There's also there was mention of a number of project management type of capabilities within this environment. One thing I did set up was using the Microsoft Planner capability, and went ahead and created a planner right within the SharePoint site where all of the CRM documents are being housed, that gives you the ability to, right from here, create a set of tasks on a particular board. You can organize those tasks into what Planner calls a bucket, a grouping of tasks. You can review draft contract. So there's a lot of basic project management type metadata that you can record and follow. Start dates, due dates. You can add some checklist items to kind of within this task keep track of what needs to be done in order to accomplish that. Associate some attachments with it. There's a whole chat history here, so as maybe multiple people are working on this particular task, they can have that conversation history associated with it. Maybe we have buckets for each of the phases, and being able to move the tasks between them. So planner, there we go.
So using this planner so let's say we're using this for the particular contract. Would this planner be part of the contract record as well, or is it a separate? So for example, I guess what I'm saying is if I assign a task to a member of my team and a member of accounting because I want to review on a particular contract, would that be linked to the contract record, or would it be separate and apart from the contract record?
So out of the box, it would be separate, but there's lots of integration potential there. So
to be able to link it. Okay.
Yeah. So planner, the planner itself, the buckets, the tasks on those are all, there's a REST API for both retrieving that information as well as interacting and creating those elements in Planner using those APIs. So that comes with Office 365 licenses, the ability to use those. So I wasn't sure in the documentation that I was provided to kind of put this together, kind of how the project management side related to the entities on the CRM side or even the documents within SharePoint. But there's a high level of integration possibilities. This is just demonstrating right here the integration between Planner and the SharePoint side of things.
Okay.
For really, fairly agile, not super complex types of scenarios. And then there's obviously Project Online, which has other licensing implications, but much more power, and also has a lot of integration potential with the different client-side object model, a JavaScript object model, REST API for that, for Project Online, and a lot of interactions with Flow between these as well. So we can use Flow to detect an event on the CRM side and go ahead and provision things on the Project Online or the Planner side. In addition to the third kind of project management potential that we have is, there are a lot of apps that other third parties have provided that are in the App Store for SharePoint Online that you can add on to an existing SharePoint site that gives you a variety of capabilities that are focused on project management, and some of those are free, some of those are have a subscription associated with them.
Sure. Okay.
So the sky's the limit there in terms of what your project management needs are and how to tackle that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. That pretty much covers everything that I had. If there's any other, one more thing I would mention. There was mention about having a contract clause database.
Yes.
I was hoping to kind of whip something together on that, but essentially, one of the simplest options would be using a SharePoint list. It could serve as that database. It could be a collection of clauses, and there could be other metadata columns that kind of allow you to group or filter and organize those clauses for reuse, and just use that online mechanism for within SharePoint to collect that. So that was one idea I had.
Okay, so that would be like right now what I have is each contract clause is in a Word document, and it's labeled. So let's say it's termination clause. Basically, I think what you're saying is use SharePoint to just keep those clauses within the same format in a Word document right? And then you could pull those from or integrate those from SharePoint into the contract management tool.
You could have it be document based. I was thinking it would be a list with a rich text field that would allow you to have the gist of the text, and maybe even not even rich text, so you eliminate the formatting part of it. It's just straight plain
just
text.
Just the content. Okay.
Yeah, just the content.
That's even better, I think.
And then you don't have to deal with the text or the formatting. It's just go look through the database. You can use the built-in search. You can associate other metadata columns that help you describe, and again, to kind of make it more like a catalog rather than just purely term-based way to find it. And then people would just grab it right from the list and paste it into their Word document.
Paste it into the document. Okay. All right. That sounds good. Thank you.
John, if you want to, I'm not sure how we're doing on time. Any other questions for me, or I'll hand it back to Tron to show some of the other things that he had wanted to get to.
So are there any questions? Do we want to continue?
I don't have any questions at this time. Just keep going.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either. That was a very good presentation on the contract, so I appreciate all the work on that.
Yeah, we do have a hard stop at 3:30 because we have another meeting that we have to. Many of us that are on this call are participating in.
Okay, so we'd like to. I can spend not even 5 minutes just to show you just a couple more things, and then we can close out here.
Perfect.
Okay. Assuming I can present. So hopefully everybody can see my screen now.
Yeah, ours says it's loading.
Okay, just let me know when you can see it.
Okay,
Yep,
we can
looks
see
like
it
we're
now.
at the portal.
Okay, so yeah, going back to this portal again, so this is just another product that is offered under Dynamics 365. One of the things in here is the ability to hand this out to your customers, and from within CRM, you can go to that customer record and you can send them an invitation. So the invitation actually looks like this here. So you can have it worded however you want, but they get a link here that basically says redeem invitation. And what that does is it takes them out to this screen, basically pre-fills that code in, and then all they have to do is supply their information like their name, phone number, email address, and so forth. So I already did that. You can do local accounts here. You can do federated accounts. You can associate Facebook, Twitter, Gmail. If they already have those accounts, they can use those to log into your site. And then once they log in, you can kind of tailor their experience. So maybe they only have access to view their contracts, or maybe only to view their own support tickets. But if I go and I click on my contracts, you can see now I'm associated. My login's associated with the AdventureWorks company or account. And here we have 4 in here, 4 contracts in here. You can define whatever columns and information you want them to see on this grid. And then they would be able to then click on any one of these and then open it up and see more detail. So I only have the contract name and the contract type here, but you can also pull in contracts that are actually associated to that contract through SharePoint right here, and they would be able to then open up and view the details of that contract. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was the mobile piece. So with anything that we build in Dynamics 365, we can turn it into a mobile application in a matter of minutes. And this is what the mobile interface looks like. And they call it a unified interface because it can be used on desktops, on laptops, on phones, on tablets, whatever the screen size is, it will adapt to that. So I would be able to take this and shrink this down to a smaller format like a phone, and you can see that I can still work with these forms and everything looks great on here as well.
Okay. That's nice.
So that's all I wanted to show you. I guess we can open up for questions. If you don't have any, then we can just stop the recording.
I mean, I think from the contract side, I'm good. I don't have any questions, but I would like to get a copy of the recording and just kind of go back through it because I may have some questions as I go back through it. But it was a very good presentation. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions from the Witt side?
I'll have to watch. There was portions that got cut out on my end.
We're fine over here.
All right, guys, it's Dina. Tron, Jed, thank you so much for everything. I'm going to send the recording as soon as I have it. Is there anything else you guys need from me currently besides the recording?
Nope, I think we're good.
Not on my side.
Okay.
Thanks for all the efforts put in for the demo. It was a good demo.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the second opportunity to do this with you guys. Is there a timeline for a decision or?
So that's kind of what our next meeting is about. So we got a couple other things going on, but yeah, Heather will be your primary point of contact moving forward, Dina.
Okay, I appreciate that. Heather, you'll be hearing from me soon, and I'll just send the demo recording out to everyone that was on the call.
Sounds great.
Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Everyone have a great weekend. Thank you.